Imagine a perfect world, a flawless utopian vision. Let yourself dream just for a couple of moments. What is your perfect world? A world without war, without famine. A world without climate change, a world without viruses or disease. Maybe a mix, maybe all of these and more. This is your perfect world, and it can be however idealistic or unrealistic you believe it needs to be. So you have this idea of a perfect world, your finish line for humanity. Now, how do we get from where we are as a species right now to where you believe we need to be? I'm in my first year of high school, if this remote situation even counts, so I am far from having my own path mapped out. But all my personal desires and aspirations point towards my vision of this perfect world, my finish line for humanity. I dream of a world without climate change, without litter, without another forest going up in flames every other week. I dream of a world where the elephants, the turtles, and the whales no longer need to be saved. But when I was in 8th grade, I didn't feel the same structured, reasoned push to make an impact. Rather, it was in 8th grade when I first became fascinated with this idea of what if I actually tried to make an impact on more than just the people in my immediate vicinity? What if I tried to take those first steps towards a more perfect world? What then could I accomplish? And so I gathered a group of peers from my middle school, and we worked for 8 months to make a change that can sound so small, yet felt monumental in the process of implementation. We did everything we could over those 8 months to have our school district, the second largest in the state, implement a fully carbon neutral, tree-free paper. We wanted our school district to swap out its paper. That's it. That's all we wanted. But why paper out of all things? Well, it was more symbolic than anything. A normal 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of copy paper is used by nearly everyone in the district on a daily basis. If we could eliminate the environmental impact of each and every ream of paper in the district, that would add up quickly, and our environmental impact could be enormous. We chose paper to show the district that if they could make such a substantial environmental difference just by swapping out their paper, well, then this would be just the tip of the iceberg of sustainability potential for the district. I had never worked outside of the scope of my own school before, so working with the district, that was exhilarating. The first month or two into the project, the month or two before the winter break of 8th grade, December 2019, consisted mainly of research. Not the type of research you do in science class or history. This was different. We had to evaluate this ultra-idealistic, tree-free, carbon-neutral paper we had found to see, was it really the real deal? Was it really as good as it sounded? So we scoured the internet for alternatives and information on costs, both financial and environmental. We even called up the suppliers. Now that doesn't sound like a big step when I say it out loud, but at the time, this was huge because it really signaled my commitment to this process. I say that because even now, calling up customer service, let alone someone higher up the corporate hierarchy, is difficult, I'll be the first to admit. My point is, even this first simple step of surface level research on problems and solutions, it was difficult for me as an 8th grader with zero experience. It was also tough to stay motivated at times. Even in middle school, our progress past that research phase was dramatically slowed down by having to deal with a district bureaucracy. I had never had to deal with a bureaucracy like this before, so it was frustrating to say the least. But every step of the way, every step of the process, I kept it in my mind that we had started this for a reason. I was obsessed with this idea of taking this first step towards a more sustainable future, a more perfect world by my measures. I was obsessed with this idea of the potential future of what if we succeeded despite all these obstacles. We'd be impacting 33 schools across the second largest district in the state. We'd be saving well over 3,000 trees annually by using this paper alternative. And we'd be making enormous sounding CO2 reductions for the district. Perhaps most importantly for me at the time, we'd be touching the lives of over 33,000 students across the district who use this paper on an everyday basis. Admittedly, we wouldn't be touching their lives very personally by just replacing their paper, but nonetheless, the numbers were what drove me. More generally, this idea of attaining a measurably more sustainable district, a measurably more perfect world. In December of 2019, couple months after we had first started this project, I had my first meeting with our middle school principal about this project. We presented our work so far to school staff and some relatively important people in the principal's office, and we caught their attention with this initiative. So the following month, following winter break in January of 2020, we met with a district official in that very same office. It was the district official in charge of supply orders for the entire district. We were so close to our goal, I could taste it. From there, our next step was to send in all our research, all our numbers, a compilation of all the work we'd done since the past fall into the district and let the bureaucracy do its thing. From there, all we could do was cross our fingers and hope for the best, hope that they would listen. And so, as we waited, the months passed, and before we knew it, springtime was upon us. We were a couple of weeks into quarantine, actually. Feels like decades ago now, when we first heard back from the district. And we heard that out of the 33 schools in the district, at our urging, 5 had made the switch to our paper. 5 out of 33. It wasn't all we had hoped for, far from it. And it was disappointing at first. But at the end of the day, a ragtag team of inexperienced middle schoolers had done something for the environment, no matter how small. But 5 out of 33. It was disappointing for a while, and even now, I don't consider it anywhere near a complete success. But slowly, over time, I began to realize that even if we weren't saving well over 3,000 trees annually, we were still saving nearly 600. We were still reducing the district's annual carbon footprint by an estimated 15 metric tons. I realized that in our efforts to swap out the paper of all 33 schools in the district, and only achieving 5, we had still made our district a little more sustainable, our world a little more perfect than it had been 8 months ago. We had still, in essence, taken that first step towards a more perfect future. And that was really all that mattered, wasn't it? At the beginning of this spiel, I asked you to imagine your perfect world. And I can guarantee it's not the one you're living in right now. Because you're not living in a utopia, far from it. But who says that we can't? If you begin to think of this perfect world as a future that is in theory attainable for our species, then you can mentally frame this as your overarching goal and work backwards to identify steps you can take in that direction. And each step, no matter the scale, is about making your world a little more perfect than it was the day before. And your path may start small as swapping out the paper of a single school. At first, my vision of a perfect world was one of sustainability, one of a stable environment, a world where humanity and nature could coexist in balance and harmony. But swapping out the paper of 33 schools, let alone 5, that wasn't going to solve climate change. Nor was it ever meant to. But it served as a vital first step towards that goal. This first initiative, it inspired me to dive deeper into environmental advocacy and environmental activism over this past year than I had ever done before. And I inspired the people around me to do it as well. And so I realized that by taking that first step, we had been able to unleash a domino effect, if you will, to bring us ever closer to that finish line for a more sustainable future, that more perfect future, that more perfect world. In 2015, the United Nations adopted 17 global sustainable development goals, a global consensus of humanity's most pressing problems, from world hunger to clean water availability to climate change. Attaining a perfect world will require us to go above and beyond these 17 goals, but they can serve as a framework, a guide to help us identify what impacts we want to make on the world and what steps we can take together, even for those of us who are still young. For we are the next generation, and we will face the brunt of many of these global issues. And now it is up to us to solve them, and it won't be easy. When I was in 8th grade, all I wanted to do was swap out the paper of a single school district, and we didn't exactly succeed. It's hard to latch onto these visions of a perfect world and pour in so much time and effort towards taking the small baby steps towards them at first, knowing that we may not see the full fruits of our efforts, we may not see these finish lines, these perfect worlds, within the next few years, within the next decades, even within our lifetimes. But if we stay committed and we stay driven, maybe someday you will and climate change. Maybe someday you will cure cancer and do the other things. Imagine what our reality could be 5, 10 years from now, if all of us latched onto our visions of a perfect world, whatever that means to us, and began to work towards it. Achieving our goals is not a race, it's a marathon. But if we aim for perfection and stop at nothing until we get there, step by step, we can redefine the impossible. And someday, we may reach these elusive finish lines. Thank you.